And Susan, I'm going to turn on your microphone because I can always depend on you to talk to me when I don't have anything else to say.
All right. Well, I was thinking of, am I on your phone? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking of calling, but it's really a third-party issue. It's just more of a report, and I'd love some advice.
Okay. Michael's with us now, too, so go for it.
Oh, okay.
How can we support you?
Thank you, Michael. Congratulations on getting in. There was a very entertaining period of a lot of twanging and crashing around. I don't know if I couldn't hear you, Jeannie, until you finally started talking in a regular way again. So anyway, yeah, thanks for it was like an orchestra for electricians. I don't know what it was. Anyway, our friend Luke, my grandson, has remained sober from alcohol, but got involved with a young woman in his AA group. I've told you about this a bit. Turns out she's a perfect stand-in for Luke's father, abusive, narcissistic, all those words that I shouldn't be probably using, especially narcissist. She's, at the moment, beautiful, but she's not going to be beautiful long because she's bulimic, and she considers her bulimia a kind of meditation. Evidently, it gives her a high to clear out her system after a meal. And she says she would leave Luke rather than, if it was a choice between her bulimia and Luke, she would choose the bulimia. And they've been together, and then they have these terrible fights. She's jealous and accusing, and if he goes to sleep, she wakes him up, unless she's asleep too. She wakes him up because she thinks somehow he's leaving her when he sleeps. This is so unhealthy, this relationship. He has broken up with her several times and then just pined for her, telling himself he's never going to find anybody who's beautiful, that he doesn't really deserve her, he's worthless without her. She gives him his worth. He's got a serious, serious problem here. And when we've done wake-up sheets, he has his memory, he always goes back to being small, remembering various incidents where he was being punished or terrified by his father. And it's so deep that he can't seem to choose another way. And yesterday he called and told me that he didn't want to live. He wasn't going to take it. He wasn't going to take his life, but he didn't want to live. He couldn't face his life. And he just desperately needed her back. So I said, are you vital enough to do a wake-up sheet? Yes. So we did a wake-up sheet. And he was honest, and he got to look at, he had many goals, and we spent a lot of time on what his goals are, which was mainly to show, they had just broken up, so he wants to show her how wrong she was. He wants to show her that he has won rather than she goes off with the last word. And we had a long period of time discussing what kind of distortion that is and why he wanted her back. Anyway, getting to the end of it, he did a good worksheet, ended up being willing to look at every negative, self-punishing thought in his mind and allow that thought and then invite it to leave, because it's not the truth. We talked about reality versus actuality. And I used your good words there. And he understood the difference between actuality and got on the track of realizing that because he was born, he deserves to be alive. He doesn't have to prove himself. He's beloved of God because he's born. And he said he felt better enough to go on with his life. It took about an hour to go through this wake-up sheet, and we've done that before. So he agreed to monitor his thoughts, simply that, to watch them, what they're doing to him, because he's introjected this girl. She's living in his head. She doesn't have to be around to punish him, and his dad doesn't have to be around punishing him, because he's punishing himself. He got it. This morning he texts me, and it's as if that conversation never took place. I want her back.
That's very typical.
Is it, oh, this is my question, like, where do you get a toehold here?
Well, my offering is, what I heard you just describe is a young man with a lot of reasons to anesthetize himself against his internalized pain. And he was anesthetizing himself with alcohol. He had an addiction that he used to cover his pain. And you helped him to start to deal with his pain, so he was able to free himself from that external addiction. A whole lot of support. I mean, you know, when he gets to the point where he's now presenting at AA groups, there is huge support that he's got in his life. And he found a new addiction.
Yeah, he did.
Whether it's
and he has
just approval addiction, whether it's approval addiction or sexual addiction, I don't know, but whatever it is, he found a new addiction. His pained realities that he hasn't worked through, but he gave up alcohol, and he's hit new levels of vitality, especially going into a relationship that strengthens you. Excitement, enthusiasm, I'm alive. And then what's unresolved in carbon-based memory pops to the surface. I mean, think about the last 5 or 6 years on the radio show. How many times have you called in that exact place and moved through layer by layer by layer to the point where you realize the process and you just continue to do your work? He does not yet have the experience to do that yet. And my offering is the place that most people live is in perception. The reality is generated by carbon-based memory. You got him to be able to drop that pained reality far enough down the rabbit hole that he woke up for a moment. And that's, you know, like that's one of the pieces of the whole process of healing. And then what happened is the next level, you know, he sleeps tonight, you know, he wakes up and sees the trigger, the reminder of his drug, this girl, and up comes carbon-based memory with a whole new layer of pained perception. And that washes out everything of the actuality, and one's stuck in the reality in their heads again. And, you know, that's the process of healing. You know, wouldn't it be nice if we had a magic wand? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a pill? And that's what everybody in the world is looking for. Give me a pill to anesthetize my pain. And the pill comes in many forms, from alcohol to drugs to you know, just addiction to negativity. And so my take is, I acknowledge you for the power and the clarity you were able to give that assisted him in moving through this next layer that he needs to do. And now he's going to have to, or pardon me, the layer that you just moved him through, and now he's going to have to do his next layer, his next layer, his next layer, and his next layer, until his being can bring in enough awareness of, oh, here's another layer of my healing, and stand in willingness to go through it. One of the things you've heard me do oftentimes on the show when someone has a big opening like that is to record it, to write it down. Now, maybe you could write down the essence of your conversation with him and send it to him, because if he's got it in front of him, he'll go, oh, yeah, I remember that. It's a faded memory because I got all this pain up, but, yeah, I remember that. And as you start to point out to him, that's the truth of what's happening now. And then the next day when a layer comes up, that's the truth of but remember that there's healing on the other side of it. And, he's going to have to simply go through the layers of pain that he carries to free himself of it. And ultimately, from what you've told me of his family circumstance, he's got to do some work on a genetic level to alleviate himself of this generational pain, because it didn't start with him. When I hear about how a certain person in his life has raged with him and with your daughter, then I know that's born and bred in him as well, and it's all going to have to be worked through. And I think that his AA group will support him in the healing process, and he's got you, and rock and roll.
Yeah. Tim Bingham has a great idea, because this girl is continuing to go to his AA groups, and she goes there very scantily dressed, and she flirts with all the other guys, and he goes out of his mind, and she's punishing him, torturing him. Then she comes back to him, and the whole cycle goes around. Tim suggested that Lukey go to an SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous group, which is the one I was in for 6 years ago.
Right.
And they have them online and get him out of that circuit of AA meetings altogether. He's not strong enough to just be confronted by her every day. He needs protection now till he gets stronger. I thought that was a great idea. And I texted him, and he said, that's a good idea. I'll look into it, whether he did or not. I've got to just get on him. I've got to stay with him on this. That's what it is. And I will. Happy to, but, man.
And, when people sometimes are sober for 20, 30, 40 years, and then all of a sudden fall off the wagon. Why do they fall off the wagon? Because they've reached a level of vitality that allows them to stare their pain directly in the face. Remember that quote from Francois Fenelon, what we're going to have to look at.
Yeah.
And when that comes up, it's a constitutional growth to be able to recognize it for what it is when it comes up, and do the work of forgiving, weakening it until one day it will come up, and he'll look at it and go, oh, I remember how it used to be when I lived like that, and he'll be free of it, and he'll keep whittling it away until that whole thing disappears, and he incarnates in his own form as a human being, as the presence of love.
May it be so. Yeah.
And one of I'm realizing more and more as I do the quantum still point work, and I've been actually processing with several people who've gone through it, that I think one of the operative benefits of it is that the negativity, the negative energetic patterns and the chemistry created by them by the mind in the body also are an addiction. And what is happening is the shift that's happening with the quantum still point is that addiction's being broken. And that gives people a whole different level upon which to move on their path. And the conversation I had with you a few weeks ago, when we get offline, we'll continue that conversation.
That's very nice of you, Michael.
Yeah.
Isn't as if you aren't
holding the
moving
space
enough and stuff.
I mean, it's awesome that you are there to support this young man, because most young men just, back into whatever they get into, and there isn't support for the real healing process. So that's pretty awesome. And also calling him to recall, as one who's a sponsor for those in AA, the times when he's had somebody who's gotten lost in their pain, and he's talked them through it, and he's going to have to learn that skill for himself. He believes that when that pain comes up, that he believes that it's real. And it's hard to remember, that old saying, when you're up to your sweet bippy and alligators, it's hard to remember the objective was to drain the swamp. When that stuff gets that intense, it's like, it takes over. It takes over. And, it's really a process. There's a saying in the scripture that says, as he becomes more, we become less. And they make that about Jesus. But that's not what it's about. As the mind of Christ, as the mind of being, of love, becomes greater, then the carbon-based memory perceptual constructs become lesser. And the process of forgiveness is how to weaken those, to remove those processes, or those constructs from carbon-based memory, which are generational and take some time, and replace it all with that mind that we're designed to live out of.
Right.
So it sounds like he's right on track, and it's awesome that you're there to support him.
Thanks, Michael. One word that he appreciated is your word, healing crisis. I said, you think you're in the mud, and but this is a healing crisis. You're already healing. And he
Exactly.
liked that idea. So thanks for the words.
The other thing you might do is guide him into a work. So the worksheet you did with him was on his relationship with this girl?
Yeah, well, that's where he went.
So,
his trigger was the girl.
Right. So the next worksheet, seeing as how the pain with Dad came up, might be to do a worksheet on Dad. Because this is all revolving around the power person dynamic.
That's a good idea, and it's never happened, so great idea.
Yeah, it'll be a good starting point. And I'll send you a link when we finish the show. I'll send you a link to the Codependence to Interdependence workshop, the streaming link. And I think that will help him to see more of what's happening. Because he's got those brain cells from AA and the work he did with you a couple of years ago, the ongoing process. So I think that might help as well. Because what I hear is he's dealing with the remnants of a power person dynamic where, he's recognizing Dad doesn't need to be around to disapprove me. I can do a fine job of that myself.
Oh, exactly. It's that little Zen story. The man who whipped his dog with a rope, and the dog took up the whip and began whipping himself. And the man said, "Ooh, another knot in my rope." That's what he's doing.
And he's right on track for healing. He's right on track. Without healing crisis, healing doesn't happen. So it's just, a step and a part in the process.
That's encouraging, too. Yeah. Okay, Michael, thank you.
Honored and delighted. Fabulous to be on the team.
Oh, yeah. The Lukey says to me, "Well, I don't have any money for therapy." And I said, you got tools. You got me. We'll do it.
Yeah. Well, you remember what Dr. Tim has said on many occasions is, as a clinical therapist, he used to follow other therapists and go do their workshops. But what he found was he and his friends who were therapists couldn't produce the results of those others. There was something that they were able to do that they weren't able to communicate, so couldn't produce those results. And that, the thing that attracted him to and had him stick with this work and use it so much in his practice is that he can hand this tool to anybody, and anybody can use it with no experience, no belief needed, no nothing needed. Just fill it in, and the process works. So,
I sent him 2 versions on PDF files right into his email yesterday, and I said, "You do these every time you get that terrible feeling. Notice the feeling and whip out a wake-up sheet." He's got a job, and so, it's, I don't know how much time, and he's got a lot of commitments with AA, which probably he should back off, find another one, as I said. Yeah, there are lots of things he could do.
Location probably would be good.
Yeah.
Perhaps feeding to him the thought that now, at this point in his healing process, this girl, to him, has become alcohol.
Oh, yeah, he knows it. We've discussed how he's addicted to her.
It's just an addiction. And it's going to take the same kind of commitment and willingness to walk away from her as it took for him to walk away from alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
I found that really is a useful thought, because are out of their external addiction, and it looks like everything's fine, but then they find some other way to anesthetize themselves, and it's like, oh, but this is so hard. Well, you remember how hard it was to walk away from alcohol or the drug? Oh yeah, okay, I remember. Yeah, it's going to be that hard for him.
Yeah.
Because it is literally an addiction. That and giving addictions up mean that I have to feel my pain. And that's never Dr. Feelgood.
No.
But it is Dr. Heelgood.
That's good. And I think one of the things you've made me aware of is, just now talking, is I ought to do a wake-up sheet on my fear for him.
Yes.
Because I've had my troubles, but he's he had a much worse time than I did, and I think I'm making it into something that is not healable from.
Yeah, well, it is absolutely healable, and he's in the process. And yes, seeing as how you're connected with his genes, him going through this, not only resonates, Orb that wants to be there to support him and cherish him and help him, but it resonates the part of Orb that connects with his addiction that needs to be healed. And so it'll be your process.
Remember that he calls me Orb. That's funny.
I think it's a cute nickname. Now, Jeannie is Mimi.
Yeah.
And I, Aria, for me, when she's feeling her oats, calls me Pappy. Normally it's Papa, but when she's kind of on it, it's Pappy. So
that's cute, right?
It is.
Well,
we are blessed by these ones.
Yeah, no kidding. How's it going down there I see Jeannie posts things like, we have bales of hay and we have a truck, and people notifying her, and she's spreading it on Facebook. People in trouble down there from the hurricane can get help, and I hope that's settling down. And all the FEMA mess and everything.
There's a lot of tragedy, and it's sad that it's being exacerbated for political reasons. That it's just tragic. It's like it's a tragedy added on to a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of people in this country who are supporting that tragedy-creating mindset just have no idea what a totalitarian dictatorship really looks like.
I don't think so, and it's amazing how. Yeah. I've been reading articles on how to understand that mindset rather than just writing them off mentally and not interacting.
It's pain.
Say that again.
Same thing.
Pain.
It's exactly the same thing. If you look at the history of anybody who's doing violence verbally, emotionally, physically, mentally, they have a history of pain, and being able to tap into. Remember, I've said over and over, hostility is not an emotion. Hostility is a drug. It's another addiction. Probably the second most common addiction in the world. Because when people jump into their hostility, they don't have to feel the pain, the trauma that they've not resolved.
That's true. Right.
And when you have a country, and when you look at it, over the years, just on one particular point, my best estimate would be that at least 70% of people, male and female in America, have been sexually abused. And you look at the pain involved in that for those people, and how many have selected the drug of rage to cover it up, and then somebody comes along and gives them permission to express their rage. What do we got?
And someone who comes along and commits sexual improprieties, which is such a weird thing to figure out in there, how that fits.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. Well, that's a whole other topic, and the radio show isn't really generally a forum for that, but I know you have strong feelings the way I do. I think one thing that concerns me the most is that I'm not sure the news we're getting is real news, including the most respected media. I'm not sure the polls or anything else reports the polls, whether these are any indication of what's really happening anymore.
Yeah, there's definitely big reason for concern and action. To me, it's taking the action out of the concern. And when you say I have strong opinions, yes, I actually my opinion isn't really about anything or anybody out there. It comes for me from concern for the fact I have 5 granddaughters.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They're literally, in the possibilities being presented politically, their lives are literally threatened. And that, to me, is the reason for action and for exposing. Again, the radio show is not a format for that, but for exposing the insanity that would threaten a young girl's life, which every young girl in this country should be concerned about, every parent, every grandparent should be concerned about. And again, I think that because we've had such a long run of liberty in America, relative, it's not perfect, of course, but relatively speaking, a long run of prosperity and liberty in America, people have no concept. They've been dulled down. Their education has been poor. They have no concept of how a totalitarian rapist would degrade the whole experience of life for everyone, including that person's own supporters.
Oh, yeah, everything. Well, this morning I was walking and I was thinking maybe like the Roman Empire, our time is run out. Our existence.
Well, I think it's a healing crisis.
It is, but let's hope it ends up on its feet enough to be able to put up some healthy thoughts. And,
if enough people step up, speak up, and take action. Go ahead.
Tim Bingham filled out 200 postcards that are to be mailed on a certain day, right like the 29th, I think.
Awesome.
Thank you for being a voter. He's been sitting. I do a few every once in a while. He's finished them now, but the guy has been sitting at the dining room table writing out these cards, and in a way it doesn't seem like much, but when you get one of those, somebody went to the trouble of writing one of those, they have an impact. So
That's an impact, yes. That's awesome. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I think so too. I'll tell him you said so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, well, any other thoughts for you today?
Oh, always. We have this beautiful little family living with us, and it has been an infusion of such delight. And I thought, what are we doing? We had no idea what we were doing. We thought we're just asking for trouble. It's quite the reverse. The energy and the upbeat. The older boy said, I wanted to be in the Navy. I wanted to wear the uniform. I love this country. But I couldn't do the training. I froze, and put him right into the long word.
Sympathetic dominance.
There it is. Those are words that don't come. Yep. And
right.
So he's had a couple of job interviews, and he's helpful around here, and he's dealing with his trauma by Tim wanted to have a talk with him about what it was like and what he felt like, and he said, I don't want to talk about that. That's in the past. I'm just going on from here. He's not even looking at it. So
Yeah, well, what he doesn't look at, he gets to carry around, and perhaps being in your space, he and the whole family will step into the willingness to be able to process through some of that and really truly free himself of it. You know, the reason he freezes in that situation is literally because of that unresolved trauma.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think he knows that. And I'm proud of the military, what they did to him. They discharged him honorably and offered him 4 months of free therapy. I don't think he's doing it, and I don't know how much good it would do because it's not the tools. I'm a snob. I'm a tools snob. I think this is the way to go. But
well,
anyway,
my offering would be offer support for him going ahead and doing that therapy and tie it in with the tools, and he's got support from all directions. And
yeah, wouldn't that be great? Well, that's a good idea.
The military, you know, I think that the military has a pretty powerful group of people who really do know how to support the healing of vets. And where there's willingness, I think that there's a lot of generous, what's the word I'm thinking of? Generous, caring, concern, and support for a lot of vets that are injured. And so I can only imagine that the therapists he would tap in with would at least be able to start to help him dig out of the hole he's in and add forgiveness to it, and bingo, he'll be freed.
Wouldn't that be good? Well, his mother has been on Dr. Tim's show, later night support group once or twice, and intends her next move when she gets time. This woman is doing 2 jobs and taking a course. So for her to spend 2.5 hours on a Zoom call with Dr. Tim is just beyond her at this point. But she did say that the next time she gets on, she's going to take her computer to the basement where the boys have their bedroom and set it up and just take part, and her son will sort of hang around over her shoulder, and she can't suggest it directly to him yet, but she thinks if I think it is too. I'm excited about it.
Help them start building the brain cells. What is the native language?
Arabic, and then they're fluent in Turkish as well, and English.
Okay. No Farsi.
No Farsi. No, your book is translated into Farsi, right?
Right, that's what I was going to say. If she had brain cells for Farsi, she might be able to read the book effectively. But
yeah, she has it for English. It's funny. She's teaching English to non-speaking Hispanic students in the public school system, and her English is great. But she said to me yesterday, her and me went out somewhere, and I said, "Are you teaching those kids to say that?" And she said, "Yeah, why?" I said, "She and I said, I'm going to be your English teacher." And she said, "Oh my God, I've been teaching you wrong stuff." And I said, "Don't worry about it. You're really engaging with them, which is new. And the principal of the school is ecstatic because she is just loves the kids and brings them out and gets them going." I said, "This is the least of it." Yeah.
Well, isn't it awesome that you can help her to refine her English skills?
That's not hard. It's just funny. She's just so willing. She said, "I will remember these things. I remember very well." She's got a great brain, Michael.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, young lady. Well, holding the space, and we'll talk to you a little later.
You. Okay,
blessings.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Bye.
All right, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody else in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
Well, nobody has a hand up. However, I'm going to take a chance. Vincent is on, and he had his hand up at the end of Dr. Tim's show, so I don't know. They didn't get around to him. Vincent, welcome. Is there anything we can support you with?
Hey, Vincent, awesome scores on your personal code evaluation. Nice work.
Hi, thank you. I have a question about, like, what is truth, because you guys been talking a lot about truth, and I know like people have like individual truths. Are we looking at like actuality's truth, or what exactly?
Well, let's start with the foundation. There's some, back in the 1950s, they did some research at Harvard University, and they came up with a way to measure the firing of brain cells. And what their conclusion was that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells were firing, the max amount of data that went into conscious awareness was 9 bits. So 10,000 bits out of reflecting in 9 bits. So the conclusion that one would come to, logically in looking at that piece of data, is that what we're looking at through perception is not facts, but evidence. It's an evidential device. And of course, something determines which evidence we get to see, something drives that process, and that's where the core of the forgiveness process comes in, because it's goals that control the process of what our mind constructs as reality. So in that time frame, the estimate, it's about a 25th of a second, 10,000 brain cells, 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity happening, and 9 bits going into conscious awareness. So that's about a 25th of a second. It's been estimated that perhaps the actuality, what's really going on in the world, is as much as 20 trillion bits of data. So here we go around, we have this device, a fly sitting on my phone here in my room as I'm talking to you would not look around the room and go, well, there's a fan, and there's a TV set, and there's a piece of art, and there's a picture, and there's a light. The brain sensory system of the fly would look around and go, oh, infrared heat, blood, food. And so it has a perceptual device that serves its purposes. And everything in the creation has that, including us. And we're the first creature in the creation that at least we know of that can turn this perceptual device on ourselves and enter into self-destruction. So when we talk about reality and actuality, we're talking about reality being the perceptual construct of the mind, and the actuality being what's actually going on. If you went to the courtroom where 6 different people are testifying about an accident, you would hear 6 different stories, and in some cases, you'd wonder if any 2 of them were at the same accident. Their descriptors, their realities would be so different. And so what we're attempting to support people doing with these tools is to take everything in the perceptual system that's false, learn to collapse it when it surfaces, and replace it with a different mind than that mind of what we call carbon-based memory. And that different mind would be the mind that we'd call the mind of Christ. Not a religious idea, not anything about a man named Jesus, but that word Christ in Aramaic is the name of an office. It's a name of a state of mind, a state of being. And so to replace it with that mind, which instead of having a lock-in on just a minuscule 9 bits of data, having a functioning mind that has access literally to all of the intelligence and wisdom in the universe. So we've got the actuality, which when we're functioning from that, we have access to literally every piece of intelligence that's ever existed. Or we've got our own individual intelligence like the fly, and we say, oh, this is whatever my mind is generating right now, my reality. Is that getting close to your question?
Yeah. Would you say the 9 bits that are being processed, is that our conscious mind? And then like the 10,000 bits would be subconscious?
Well, the 10,000 would be subconscious and or unconscious, and 9 bits is what we are consciously aware of. In the ancient scriptures, it was called the mind of man, carbon-based memory. If you look at this 9-bit mind, it's reflecting data that's stored within the structure. If you think of, two different minds, the mind of man and then the mind of love, or the mind of the Creator, the mind of Christ. There are two different perspectives on the ability to be aware of what's happening in the actuality. And so the objective of forgiveness is to collapse perception and ultimately replace it with this mind that has access to literally everything, rather than being locked into carbon-based memory. And the reason we call it carbon-based memory, if you think of the mind of love or the mind of Christ that has access to everything and is the presence of love that you are, or is a function of the presence of love that you are, if you think of that mind being active, and then, logically, if something inhibits that mind from operating, what would you call that? Well, if that mind is the mind of Christ, then there's the Antichrist. What is the Antichrist? The Antichrist is what comes from carbon-based memory, because although it may have some relationship to what's going on in the actuality, what's coming from carbon-based memory, by definition, is always something stored in the cell from the past. So you'll remember in the ancient scriptures, they talked about the carbon-based memory, or the mind of man, had a number. The Antichrist had a number, and it was 666. If you took your body into a lab and said, hey, break this down and tell me what its base element is, the main component that they'd find would be the carbon atom. And the carbon atom has 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. And everything that comes via perception, by definition, is from the past, because if it's stored in carbon-based memory, obviously it's from the past. The objective is to free ourselves of that. Yes, it had its place. It still has its place. See, there's a lot of information there that I have, a lot of experience that I have, and if I need that information, I call on it, just like I have a computer with a lot of information in it. When I needed that information, I call on it, but it doesn't run my life. Most people have fallen into the trap of letting carbon-based memory run their lives, which means all they do is replicate the generational patterns over and over and over again, and replicating the generational patterns in the ancient teachings was called living in the desert, just living out of unconscious dynamics.
So will we still use carbon-based memory even if we're still operating from that Christ consciousness?
Yeah.
Like aspects.
Yeah, it's that information.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think the ultimate extension of the work will be where you don't have to rely on that for anything, that you rely on the mind of Christ that has access to all wisdom, all information, not only present, but through all time, past, present, and future.
So when we're tapping into actuality, like infinite possibilities, we're still only able to process 9 bits at a time. It's just going to be a different 9 bits as opposed to if we were running from carbon-based memory.
Well, let me use a metaphor for that. Let's imagine that you have, from early childhood into your adulthood, you have the only mode of transportation you've ever had is roller skates. And somebody comes along and offers you a self-driving car. You may want to try to understand that self-driving car in terms of the brain cells that you have, roller skates, as a mode of transportation. And it's never going to happen. You're never going to get it through those brain cells. You're going to develop a whole different set of brain cells. It's going to come from a whole different place. And it'll be so different that at this point it will be inconceivable. But when we get to the ultimate, if you listen to Yeshua, he says to those he's working with, working through this process, he says, there's so many things I want to say to you, but you can't hear them. You don't have the brain cells for them yet. You've got to build the brain cells for them to be able to comprehend outside of the framework that you've got. If I had this fly and it lands on my hand, I said, hey, look over there. There's a television set. Where is the fly going to put the idea of a television set in its structure? There's a piece of art. It's like there's no capacity for it. And carbon-based memory does not have the capacity for what's really possible. It was a tool. It had a place, but it isn't what we're going to run our lives from. That make sense?
Yeah. What do you think the best way to stay in the Christ consciousness is? Is it just like looking at all of the negative emotions we experiencing and just getting rid of that, and then that's where we end up?
Well, if we've been doing this radio show. In the new year, we'll be going into our 15th year, and we've done it 5 days a week, pretty much 52 or 365 days a year. Been a few times where it's broken down or whatever, but so if you went back to show number 1, almost 15 years ago, and started listening from there through to where you listen to every show, which is well over 5,000 hours, I would not say, and Dr. Tim would not say a word that didn't address the question you just asked. It's every tool we got. It's everything we're working with. It's the forgiveness tool. It's the codependence worksheet. It's the responsibility communication tool. It's the breath. It's each and every tool. They're all part of a system that over the last 50 years I've knit together to support people making that shift. And as you practice and utilize the tools, there'll be tools that you'll go, oh, this one's really working for me. And then maybe I'll make a suggestion of a different tool, and you go, I tried it, doesn't work for me. And then 2 years from now, we'll have another conversation, and you'll come back, and I'm saying this from experience. I've had people do it. You know that tool you told me to use 2 years ago? And I said, it doesn't work for me. Well, man, that one's literally, one woman I've got in mind said, that has become my best friend. So each tool, and you'll see as you engage the work, there are a whole, a total, I haven't sat down recently, of probably 35 or 40 different tools that we offer. And each one you'll pick up and you'll have your own unique way of practicing it. So like we've got a mind shifter tool. That might just really be the thing that you're ready for and it really moves you. We've got the reality management worksheet. That might be the thing that really moves you. So each tool will unfold in its utility for you as you do your process, as you do your work.
You are, wherever you are, there's something that'll resonate at the moment.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And so ultimately, the goal is to replace the limited perceptual constructs of the 9-bit mind with a mind that has access to all wisdom, all intelligence, and all capability from all of time. That's the ultimate goal. And if I said to the fly, this is what we're going to do for you, the fly would go, I don't even know what that means. And until we do the work, we don't really know what it means. It's the doing. It's the process. It's kind of like, if you said, I want to go in the gym and I want to become the world's top weightlifter, and you go in the gym and you work and you work out and you work out, then you develop a strength and an ability that someone who says, well, I'd like to be the world's strongest, I'd like to do the best weightlifting competition in the world and win it, but, I really don't want to go into the gym, and but I'll send somebody else in the gym to do it for me. That person's never going to develop the capacity nor the range of experience that the person who does the work is going to do. So it's the doing of the work that develops the capacity and the range of experience that allows us to expand into what we're really designed to be. And my offering is we are not designed to be these people running around in hostility or fear. Who was it? I forget who said it. This loveless toil that we engage in. We're not designed for any of that. And it's the doing of the work that opens our capacity to true experience of human life. There's an interesting quote that comes from a fellow named Rumi, who's a 13th century Sufi mystic, and he says this. Let me get to it here. Just one second. He says, there is one thing you must do. One thing in this world you must always remember to do. If you forget everything else and not this, there's nothing to worry about. But if you remember everything else and forget this, then you will have done nothing with your life. It is as if a king has sent you to some country to do a task, and you perform 100 other services, but not the one the king sent you to do. So human beings come into this world to do a particular work. That work is the purpose, and each is specific to the person. If you don't do it, it's as though a priceless Indian sword were used to slice rotten meat. It's a golden bowl being used to cook turnips, when one filing from the bowl could buy 100 suitable pots. It's like a knife of the finest tempering nailed into a wall to hang things on. And you say, but look, I'm using the dagger. It's not lying idle. And Rumi says, do you hear how ludicrous that sounds? For a penny, an iron nail could be bought to serve the purpose. You say, but I spend my energies in lofty enterprises, study jurisprudence and philosophy and logic and astronomy and medicine and the rest. And Rumi says, but consider why you do those things. They are all branches of yourself. Remember the deep root of your being, the presence of your Creator. Give yourself to the one who already owns your breath and moments. If you don't, you will be like the man who takes a precious dagger and hammers into his kitchen wall for a peg to hold his dipper gourd. You'll be wasting valuable keenness and forgetting your dignity and purpose. And basically, the purpose of the world today, as it exists, the way our culture is working, is basically to distract us from that and engage us in things that, in the true eternal sense of eternal life, engage us in things that are meaningless. And so discovering that's one of the workshops we do is called Purpose, Personal Power and Commitment, tapping into what's my real purpose. And virtually everyone who experiences that, and I speak of myself as well, when I first tapped into that, I mean, it turned my life around from, senselessness to what I do today. So each tool will provide a step in another direction of what he's speaking of as this valuable keenness, your dignity, and your true purpose.
And we all have
and that's what
true purpose.
We all have our individual. My take, what I point out in the Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment workshop is that each and every human being has precisely the same purpose as their primary purpose, and that is to develop this spirit, what we could call this spiritual body, this true self, to develop and live out of that is the primary purpose of every human being. And one who doesn't engage in that has lost an opportunity to truly have a human life. And then there's a secondary purpose that each of us has, and that is the way that we're going to, the method in the world, through the skills and talents that we have, to bring about and to fulfill our primary purpose. So we cover two levels of purpose in that workshop, primary and secondary. And to do that, one of the things you have to do is bypass the brainwash of the world. Because when you and I came into the world had a purpose for us. It was go get a job and make money. We want to own your life and your breath until you die. And then we'll throw you away. And that's the world's game, is, we want you to be a good commercial servant, and so we will brainwash you from day one. You see the warning in the scriptures that says, do not be molded by the world. And we have a system in the world it's all about molding children's minds to the world. Like, how bizarre is that? And so when it says do not be molded by the world, you know, the world is going to try to grab your creative power and your attention and use it for its purposes. And the objective of this work is to say thank you very much, but I'll pass, and develop my human life for its true purpose, for what I was created for. And it wasn't to be a servant to the king.
Do you think like the true purpose is just like the love, like to just express that? Like,
well, the expression of it would be the effect of your true purpose. The cause of it would be the recognition that that is your created essence and that you function out of that. That you, it's not that you love anyone. That's a total false trap that people fall into, but rather that you function through your body as the active presence of love, and that you solidify that state of being in your life experience. Then you fulfilled your true purpose.
what do you think about like still like telling people you love them and just like saying that even mentally, if it like uplifts you?
What we do in our world, what Jeannie and I do, is we've given up that fallacy that we love one another, because, you know, either love is a verb or it's a noun. If love describes who you are as a state of being, then you are that, you don't do that. So we've shifted the language into, I cherish you. Recognize that I hold you in esteem and care and concern, and I cherish you, and to being the presence of love in my relationship with you. And that one of the purposes of our relationship is to support each other in doing the work that allows us to work through whatever comes up from our own individual carbon-based memory systems that would take us out of love, that would compromise us in that regard. So the language, I mean, and sometimes we still, just out of old habits, because there were spent decades not realizing the word love describes a state of being. It doesn't describe something that we do to each other. And we come in, literally, if you hold a newborn child, we come into the world as the active presence of love, and the special of the world is to knock that out of us. And then they send us out into the world, around 14, 15, 16, 17, and say, now go find somebody to love you. And we're sent on a false journey. Find your human life, live from that, and you will create relationship that will be beyond anything the world could imagine, that the world calls a love relationship. You'll notice that most people's love relationships, I think the number in America is about 60%, end in divorce. And what people call love isn't love at all. It's a very venial form of approval. And you notice that somebody that you 1 minute are saying, I love you, mistakenly saying that, what you're really saying to them is, I approve of you. And you notice the next minute when they violate a goal you have for them, what happens to the approval or the love? In a second, it can turn to hate. If it was love in the first place, it will never be anything other than the presence of love. That is, that I'm able to presence my human life in my interaction with you. And then from that space, I honor and cherish you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, the show has whispered in my ear that they're going to cut us off, but if appropriate, let's continue this conversation on Monday if there are more questions. I'm delighted to be chatting with you.
All right, Tuesday?
Today is Monday.
Oh, pardon me, tomorrow. I was thinking it was
Yeah.
Friday already. Okay, time flies.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, sir,
Yeah,
holding the space. Have a blessed one. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I lost you there for a second. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, I said I'm going to be here tomorrow as well, so we can continue the conversation.
Awesome. Let's do it. Look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you.